Hello, everybody. Welcome into GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Wednesday, April 2nd. Hope everybody's having a great day so far. We have a lot to get into today. We talked a little bit about the owners meeting yesterday. Today, we're going to do a whole deep dive into it, not just the tush push, but everything that went on in there, the new rules that got passed, what got tabled, and what we might expect to have these rules change in the NFL this year. A couple massive contracts given out over the last couple of days in the MLB, including Garrett Crochet, Jackson Merrill, and Ketel Marte, all getting over $100 million from their teams, respectively. Of course, every Wednesday, we do our NBA power rankings. We'll do that as well as a whole bunch of other NBA topics with Jokic and Curry going off last night, as well as Carmelo Anthony being selected to the Hall of Fame. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, April 2nd. But like I was saying, we are going to get a little bit here into our NFL owners meetings. There was a lot that came out in the NFL owner meeting, but the most important ones, at least for the NFL-wide situation, were the rule changes. And there were a couple of major ones, a couple of minor ones. We're going to focus on the big topics that changed from the owners meetings. We're going to start off with the kickoff. The kickoff is something that has been a big issue in the NFL for a while at this point. They've been trying to figure out how to make it safer, which is why we've seen them go to this new dynamic kickoff format that we've seen in a bunch of spring leagues, including the UFL, as the NFL continues to kind of test, not officially, but use the UFL as this testing ground for some new rules. They had this kickoff already. I was a fan of it last season in the NFL. They're still going to remain with those dynamic kickoffs, but really one of the reasons that they switched to the dynamic kickoffs, aside from safety reasons, is because they wanted to make it so that there would be more returns. So to do that, they moved the touchback from the 25 to the 30-yard line, set up a whole parameter so that we would get as many returns as we possibly could. And in the beginning, it looked like it was working, and it still worked. We got a lot more returns than we were used to getting in the last couple seasons. But as we settled in, kickers and teams decided, hey, it's fine. They can start at the 30-yard line. So to once again help to make the kickoff a more exciting play as opposed to just an automatic touchback, they have moved the touchbacks from the 30-yard line now to the 35-yard line. Now, we're going to have to wait and see how much this is going to affect, because this is a huge advantage for offenses on touchbacks now, right? We talk about the 40-yard line being a crazy penalty. Right now, with the way that kickers are, there's a lot of kickers out there that can hit these 60, 65-yard field goals. Not as many of them that can make 65, but kickers that pretty consistently can hit from 60 yards out. A 60-yard field goal, you just need to get to the 43-yard line of the other team. That's all you need to get to, right? You need to get to the opponent's 43-yard line. You start on your own 35, that is just 22 yards to get into field goal range. That is a lot easier than 27, and even there, we saw a lot of field goals last year. We saw a lot of drives, a lot more aggression on fourth downs because the field position wasn't as bad because these were touchbacks. But the question does continue to go, how far until NFL teams start to get a little iffy on it? Once they hit the 40-yard line, they're going to have to change those penalties, because then the penalties are the same as the touchback, right? Right now, the difference between kicking it out of bounds and kicking it over the end zone is 5 yards now. Unless they decide to change that penalty, I think we might see a lot more teams try to do that risky strategy of kicking it more towards like a coffin corner kind of situation, trying to get it to go out of bounds in the end zone after it bounces in that landing zone, with the risk being 5 yards as opposed to 10 yards. Now, that's something that I think we might see some NFL teams implore this season. But overall, I wonder if the 35-yard line really does change some things. We saw the 25 to the 30 didn't do too much, but as we continue to inch our way closer and closer to the 50-yard line, closer and closer to NFL kicker field goal range, I just get the feeling that eventually this will work. And I can see it already. If it doesn't work again this year, they might push it to the 40. I can't see him pushing it past the 40, and even the 40 seems a little bit crazy. The 35 is pretty far out already. But anything to get that kickoff to be a real play rather than just a touchback is kind of their goal right now. So that's one of those minor rules that was moved. Another minor rule that has changed is the playoff overtime rules now apply in the regular season. It still doesn't fix my biggest issue with the regular season overtime, which is the fact that there can still be ties. But the overtime rules in the playoffs now apply in the regular seasons. For those who are unfamiliar with it, the playoff overtime rules basically just let each team have a possession. Touchdown or no, each team has one possession. It still would be a tie. It's still 10-minute overtime periods, would be a tie if it were still tied at the end of that first overtime, which is my biggest issue. I'd like to see them implement some kind of, not really a shootout, because I know the NHL fans don't really love shootouts anyway, but some shootout style kind of thing in the NFL. Maybe you get kickers to do a long field goal kickoff or something. That could be a little bit of fun there at the end of the end of the game. But a lot of people would not be a big fan of that, leaving it all to the legs of the kickers. There's a lot of things they can do, but to get the overtimes to be a little bit more fair, we'll see how this goes. This is how the old overtime rules used to be before they made the changes. I like it. I like the fact that both teams get a chance. I just like to see them try and figure out a way around ties. The other minor rule that did get passed is the fact that they will be moving off of the chain game. And maybe this one is a little bit more major than we think. We're already seeing in a lot of different sports. Soccer, for instance, uses their VAR. They've got these cameras that can tell you exactly where the ball is. They use the computer models to go and check if it's over the line, if it's offside, stuff like that. We've seen it work over there. We've seen it work in the UFL, more crucially, where they're using the chip in the ball, measuring it down to the centimeter, off a margin of error of just centimeters, trying to figure out, is it a first down? Where is that ball being spotted? This is something that, might anger those old heads in football, the people that are like, we can't change it. Go yell at a cloud, right? This is something that is good for the game. We've seen so many controversies. Obviously, the one that pops into your head from most recently is the Bills-Chiefs one, where a lot of people, people that were broadcasting the game, people that cover the sport, thought it was a first down. It was ruled as not a first down. Chiefs get the ball back, and that ultimately helped send the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. Not the only reason, but definitely a major reason why the Bills didn't win that game. Now we get the computerized world. We've seen it in tennis. We've seen it in soccer. We've seen it in spring football. Now they're going to partner with Sony to help spot the ball. You're still going to have the refs out there. And, as much as the chain gang is good for what football looks like, it's a good thing that it's gone. Because one of the things that the chain gang does cause is injuries. There has been a non-zero amount of injuries due to this chain, due to the chain gang. It's still just it's literally a chain on the ground. Players can trip over that, get their cleats caught in it. It has happened in the past. It can lead to some nasty stuff, and it's just a big thing of metal. Now that that's out of the game, not only does that help with a minimal amount of player safety, to be fair, but it does help with player safety a little bit, and we're going to be more accurate. Hopefully the NFL does this right. We're still going to have to see it in action in the preseason before anything really happens, but I do love the fact that the chain gang, no more, it's still going to be a part of the lingo. It's going to be one of those things that we say and we don't really understand what it means. We're going to have to go back, they used to measure the first downs with a literal chain. So That's going to be a little fun piece of trivia in the next 20 years. But outside of that, nothing else major was passed. There were a couple major things that were talked about but were tabled, including the tush push. The tush push is one of the big conversations coming out of the owners' meetings, with 16 of the 32 owners in favor of banning the play. Now, we've been over this a couple times. I'm not a big fan of the tush push getting banned. I think it's one that you just need to figure a way to stop it. I also understand teams making certain arguments. The arguments that they're making for why it might be banned make no sense to me, though. The fact that it causes player injuries, there's been nothing to prove that injuries are caused from that play. There were 0 injuries last season in an NFL study, absolutely nothing from that. It doesn't affect the pace of play. The one reason I've seen that makes me understand why teams might not like it, it's not the one that the teams are going with, but it's the fact that you can't push defensively. And sure, it's one of those things where it's like, it's maybe a little bit of a gray area, but not every team can do it successfully. And because of that, this feels like a personal attack against the Super Bowl champion Eagles more than anything, as teams just need to figure out a way to either do it themselves or they need to figure out a way to stop it. And that is a lot easier said than done, but it's not something that calls for a ban, because 10 years from now, the Eagles are not going to be nearly as good at this play as they are right now. But the final one, and one of the more interesting ones that came out during the NFL meetings today, is the fact that the Lions proposed the new seeding for the NFL playoffs. It doesn't take away the automatic qualification that comes with winning your division. What it would take away is the automatic top 4 seeds. You would no longer be able to see those teams that come out winning their division at 9-8 have a home game to begin the NFL playoffs in the wild card round. Now you would go and you would just go by record. I'm a big fan of this. This is something that, again, it's going to make the old heads of football not very happy. And I can understand, right? It's been like this forever. But that's not a reason not to advance. It doesn't affect it too much. Where I would draw the line is taking away the automatic playoff spot for the winner of the division. Kind of like they do in the NBA. It makes the divisions meaningless. And I like the fact that you have these pre-baked rivalries in the NFL. It's something that makes it mean more, especially when you play these guys 2 times every single year. It helps really build up the culture in that sport, a little bit of a rivalry between the players, not just historic rivalries. Maybe, you get these guys a reason, some tight games, some things, said a little bit, trash talked a little bit too much. You're going against them 2 times a year. It gets the players actually into the rivalry a little bit. And I do really love that about the NFL. As long as the winner of their division still gets a spot in the playoffs, I have no issue with reseeding based on record, because you want to reward teams like the Vikings last year that won 14 games. They were rewarded with a 5 seed. They were one of the best 5 seeds by record of all time. And this is not just a thing from last year. You can go back ever since they expanded to 7 teams, every single year, all but 1 year, you would have shuffled everything around in each of those conferences. Sometimes you'd shuffle all the way up to the 2 seed. Sometimes you would just shuffle over to the 4 seed. But the 4 seed a lot of times falls to number 7, falls to number 6, falls to number 5, right? This is not a huge deal. I really don't think it is, but it's something that I would be interested in seeing. I doubt that one's actually going to pass, but that is something that I would be in favor of if I was voting on it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What were your biggest takeaways from the NFL owners meeting? What do you think? What do you think is going to happen with these rules? How effective do you think these rules are going to be? What do you think of some of the stuff that did or didn't get passed? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention over to baseball. The baseball season about a week in now. Tomorrow will be 1 week in. There were 3 major contracts handed out over the last couple days. We're going to break each of them down, talk about whether or not they deserved it, and much more coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.